welcome to another episode of Games to Reality. This week is Diablo 4 to Demonic Lore. I am Sanctorum, and with me is...
Malkariss.
So this week we're going to be talking about the newest Blizzard game, Diablo 4, what they've done with the game so far, how the game released, comparing it to Demonic Lore, and everything in between, seeing where the conversation goes with it. So with that being said, how did you feel about the game itself?
Okay. So I have some conflicting opinions here. And conflicting because what I'm going to say actually literally conflicts against each other. So I love it and I hate it. I absolutely love the way that they did the storyline. I loved the story. I love the world that Blizzard's created for the Diablo franchise. There's a lot going on there. I absolutely love that aspect, right? Like, I would say the game is worth a playthrough in its release date and in its current state for the story alone. Like, that alone makes it worth playing through. However, I think that they have some issues with replayability and longevity. I hear that they might be fixing some of those upcoming, but where the game stands now, that's kind of where my thoughts are. How do you feel?
We're kind of on par. So I've been a huge fan of Diablo since Diablo 1, and I've played the game religiously. Diablo 1, Diablo 2, Diablo 3. I even tried out their Little Immortals mobile game, and now Diablo 4. So I've been a huge fan. It's such a story-rich game with a lot of lore in a land of sanctuary. However, I do feel you're right. Diablo 4 had this huge expectation with all of this build up to the game, and their biggest conversation was endgame content, how much you're going to be able to do, and then you hit endgame and it felt empty. The cinematics, the story, absolutely incredible. It was worth it 100% just to play through that one time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the cinematics, they have always had, like, the best cutscene cinematics out of any game-making company. I mean, fight me on that. Like, I'll stand by that one. Even in Diablo 2 for the day, back in the day, that was amazing quality. The voice actors, the actual CGI that they used, it was just above and beyond anything else that was out there. And the story gripped you in. I mean, they've always been ahead when it comes to that.
Yeah, they have. And if you are a Diablo fan or you've played previously and you haven't played Diablo 4 yet, I'll just say that story goes back and loops back into Seal Diablo 2, where they really picked up from Diablo 2. The true storyline and that build-up is just incredible. Hopefully they'll continue it. They've confirmed 2 expansion packs to the game so far, I believe released on an annual basis. They haven't given release dates yet for either of them, and I know Season 1 was kind of a bust in the game. Wasn't a lot to do. Including myself, it was hard to hook and draw me in. There wasn't a lot of content. I played for a few hours and it felt like I played through the entire seasonal content. So I kind of just dived off with a lot of the other players, it seems like.
Yeah, they had something like, wasn't it like a 94% drop off or something kind of recently of players? I mean, I went the other day just out of curiosity to check their Twitch page, and there was less than 100 viewers. That's insane. There should be way more than that for any AAA game release that happened within the last year.
Yeah, so when the game released, they were around 6 point some million players playing Diablo 4 at the time of release, and now on any given day, it seems the servers are peaking out around 400,000. From what I've been able to read, I'm not really sure on those numbers. That didn't come directly from Blizzard, but a couple different sites were right around the same ballpark area on what the servers are at, players now, compared to release. And they're trying to, with Season 2, bring more content, make it easier to level, get more of the time-wasting stuff out of the way. As far as you start a new season, you don't have to go back and do all these quests, or you don't have to go back and build up all of your credit that you did before. So hopefully they fix it on that realm, but it also feels like there's not much to the game beyond for end play.
Yeah, and I have to say that this style of game, this sort of like RPG kind of hack and slash dungeon game, if you will, is my favorite RPG. If I was to list off my top 3 favorite games, 2 of them would be this style of game. And because of that, I'm very passionate about my thoughts there. But I don't know. I think that there's a lot of potential with Diablo 4, right? I think that's the key word, is there's a lot of potential there. I thoroughly enjoyed my first playthrough. It was very enjoyable. Like, don't get me wrong, the game was awesome. It's just keeping you engaged for the longer time. So other games like Path of Exile, for instance, is a competitor of the Diablo series. It's often thought of being much more complicated and involved, whereas like a Diablo is generally considered to be a little bit more casual play. But a game like Path of Exile, you can easily sit and sink 1,000+ hours into, whereas where Diablo stands right now, I could never see myself doing that. I don't even know if I broke 100, to be honest with you. But I think that they have room to grow and expand the game to where it could become a game where you could log 1,000+ hours on it and still enjoy playing it after that. So I'm really looking forward to some of the new content that they release and some of the improvements that they do. So fingers crossed on that.
Yeah, and going back to like even Diablo 2, it is a game you could beat the whole game in 2 days if you really wanted to, if not sooner, if you really wanted to sit down, dedicate yourself. I mean, it's even possible to beat at least the first 5 acts in 1 day on normal and then head into Nightmare or Hell difficulty. But it wasn't just the story that kept you in the game. It was afterwards you had things to grind for. You had runes to find. You were gear orientated. You were trying to get stuff to trade for what you needed. And that all kind of changed. And Diablo 3 started out the same way. Diablo 3, there wasn't much to necessarily grind for. You got to your build, you got to the end game. They had a couple things, and it did build itself and fix itself in the later versions to where it was more playable and you had fun doing that grind. So hopefully with Diablo 4, they'll follow suit. But I really liked the facet of finding gear, trading, and then building up to do the end tier game. And right now it seems the biggest end tier is fighting Lilith again on a shadow level, and that's all you're gearing up for. Well, where's the challenge? How can I go higher? The rifts, just like in Path of Exiles, the end game tier maps, you can always go harder and harder and harder. And Diablo 3, the levels within the rifts and the challenge rifts, you can go higher and higher and higher. There's no challenge right now once you get to that final difficulty, and that just kind of kills it. There's nothing to grind and look for and say, oh my gosh, I found this.
Yeah, that's one of the things with those other games that you mentioned too, is they have, in one way or another, they have an infinitely scalable area, right? Like there's not a limit to how hard it can get or how high it can get. Path of Exile has the, what's it called? I forget the underground, the delve. That's what it is. The delves.
Yes, the delves.
And those go forever. And then Diablo 3 has the greater rifts, like you mentioned, and I believe that those are infinite as well. They don't actually have an end, do they?
There is a max. I believe it's 125 or 150. There is a max. I've never hit the max. Highest I've ever gotten in Diablo 3 is like 107, 108 area, I believe.
Gotcha.
It's been a long time since I played, but there is or seems to be a max limit. And I know their last season before Diablo 4 came out, there was quite a few people on the leaderboards and they've hit the max level. Now they were just competing for the fastest time.
That's crazy. Well, by the time you hit that max level, I mean, you're way into the game, many, many, many hours down. So even if there is a cap, it's still not something that the average player would hit or even come close to, probably.
Right, and that's just like Diablo 2. I mean, part of the grind was finding the gear, doing trades, getting the best of the best, but the other piece of it was getting to level 99, and that was no easy feat. For all the years I've ever played that game, I've never gotten a character to level 99. My highest character, I think, was 94. And
wow.
The XP and the time play requiring to get to level 99, level 98 to 99 alone is the same experience as level 1 to level 98, all added up together.
That was Diablo 2, you said, right?
Yeah. So even with the
Yeah.
resurrected version, I think 92 was the highest I got on a character, whether that's the ladder or not.
I don't even know that I ever hit 90. If I did, it was like 90 or 91. It wasn't any higher than that, for sure, in Diablo 2. But I've also gotten a lot of characters up to the higher levels, too. But by the time, at least for me personally, by the time you hit that super high level, and you're very well geared and everything, and you get to that where you're kind of min-maxing everything, that's generally where I'm like, oh, let's start a new character that does this, and instead of bringing it to the finish line, I get sidelined and distracted.
I kind of get the same way. Plus, it would be really frustrating when you're level 92 and something happens, you die, and you lose a crap ton of experience getting to that level. So you're almost starting over, pending how many times you die.
Oh, yeah.
It hurts. So, I mean, I've been there before where you're getting really close to the next level, the game goes to crap, you're frustrated, so you're like, okay, I can do this, let me go get my gear back. You go in, you get murdered again, you go in, you get murdered again, and next thing you know, your whole bar of XP's gone, so you just leave the game and lose it all, start over, and it's like, all right, never mind, I'm gonna start something else.
Yep, there goes 200 hours of effort.
Exactly, and also with the piece of Diablo 4 is you had your own Diablo 4, you kind of have like your own builds, and the Paragon system is an awesome addition to the game for leveling along with your skills. It's a new take, a new twist on it. I just kind of feel it's going to change and it's going to evolve with the game itself as time goes through, and they're trying to make it more customizable, because I know that was one of the things with Diablo 3 was you pick your skill, you pick your secondary preset in there if you want one, and you go. There wasn't really no customizable character, so it seemed like each season that came out, these were your top tier characters with the newest patch, and if you're going to make top leaderboard, this is what you have to play.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it kind of became less of a build a cool build that's fun for you and do that, and more of a, well, this is the build to play this season if I want to, hit these goals and accomplish this.
Right, and if you ever wanted to make the leaderboard and you weren't using those builds, it was few and far between. You had to get really creative, and you had to have top tier gear just to do it. So I do like the idea that Diablo 4 is trying to get away from that and give people more of an option and creativity behind the builds they want to play. However, you're always going to see the people who just go to the build sites and say, okay, this is probably the best in slot for Barb, I'm going to take this build.
The meta maniacs. Yeah. I don't know. I'm really excited. I do have to say that. I am really excited because Diablo 2 is one of my all-time favorite games. Diablo 3, it was fun. I wouldn't say it's in my top 5, but I definitely enjoyed my time playing it and sunk more hours into it than I probably care to admit. So I think they're going to fix Diablo 4 and turn it into one of those longer lasting games. The question is when and how much will it cost? I'm a little worried about it turning into a money sink of a game with the expansions and, season passes and all that stuff. But as long as they don't go the pay to win method that they did with Diablo Immortal, I think we'll be all right. As long as it's not Diablo Immortal.
Yeah, we're not even gonna that's not even a Diablo game to me. That was a Blizzard cash grab, in my opinion. That was the story. I understood the story. I played through just so I could play the story, and it kind of took place between Diablo 2 and setting up to Diablo 3. So, I mean, as far as the lore of the games go, it filled in the gap between Diablo 2 and 3. But otherwise, it was just a cash grab. If you wanted to do anything competitive or find gear or this or that, you spent money.
It gave us a lot of memes, at least, It did. Do you not have phones? But then they finally announced Diablo 4 and made it right.
I won't lie, I've always wanted a Diablo game for my phone, and then they gave me that, and I realized I should have been careful what I wished for, because that just was not. I'd rather give me Diablo 2, the original graphics, on my mobile device so I can play that. I'll be a lot happier.
Yep. I do have to say, though, when it comes to excitement levels, there's been 2 games that I can remember in my life and I'm a pretty avid gamer, or at least I was when I was younger, and now it's a time thing, right? I still play more than I should, but I'm not one of those, hundreds of hours a week people either. But I consider myself quite a gamer, and there's only ever been two games that I've been super, super excited for when they were announced. The first one was Elder Scrolls Skyrim when that came out. That one was go to GameStop back when you still bought physical copies of games for a midnight release. That's how excited I was for that one, back when that was a thing.
Yep.
And the other one was when they dropped that trailer for Diablo 4. That was probably the second most excited I've ever been for a game. And for the series to have that much influence and that much power, especially when most of us probably were excited about and remember fondly Diablo 2, which was 25 years ago or something like that.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, that's insane that a game 25 years ago can still get us excited for a new game in that series. Not saying that Diablo 3 wasn't good or anything, but I think a lot of us are excited because of our memories of Diablo 2, not 3. And so there was a lot of excitement there, and that excitement prevails. So I think that a lot of the audience that plays the game is willing to give a little bit more leeway when it comes to them improving it than we might be with other developers, if you know what I mean. So I'm okay to say, hey, you know what? I bought this game. I had a good time with its playthrough. It's not really suited for long play, but I bet they will make it that way, and I'm okay waiting for that. And I'll still be happy when they make those changes. Whereas I'd probably honestly be a little more critical with other developers if I'm being completely transparent.
You're right. And back to the trailer, when I seen that and the whole by 3 they come, I was like a kid at Christmas. And then they released the actual date finally, gave us a hard date, and I had a countdown on my phone because I was so excited for Diablo 4. Like, I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. I played both of the open betas, played the server slam, all of those things just to get every little lick and moment, and the game actually dropped. I flew through Act 1 because, well, I already found the Lilith statues, did as much as I could in the betas, and enjoyed the rest of the game through the story, and it's just absolutely incredible. And then you get to end game and you're like, well, now what? You got a couple things to do here. They have some world events to do. A world boss drops. You level up. And we'll make some quality life improvements. But I really do think it is a game I'm willing to give the time to. They've had my heart since Diablo 2. Diablo 3 started out rough, so I'm trying to keep an open mind with that. And I do love the fact they took Diablo 4 and they went back to the true Diablo era. If you look at Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, graphics for its time at least, bloody, gory, gothic, dark style game. Diablo 4 completely smashed that. I mean, the cutscenes and the gore and the true Diablo style has come back with the game, where Diablo 3, it wasn't quite there for that piece of it. They killed that. Now, the other piece they're talking about bringing back, and some people say it's confirmed, is our favorite, the classic secret cow level.
Come on. I need that.
It's been out there, and they said the items are in the game to open the portal, but it's not in the game yet. At least is the bits and pieces I'm hearing about. I haven't seen anyone in it, haven't seen it opened. So maybe with the new season, that'll be something we're looking at. Even the developers have kind of hinted towards it now. At first, nope, there's not going to be a cow level. There's not going to be a cow level. Well, now, since Diablo 2, it's kind of became a rite of passage. Diablo 2, you have the secret cow level. You kill the Cow King. Diablo 3, you have the secret cow level. And, well, the Cow King's a ghost, so you kill the, what is it, the prince or the queen? I don't remember. In like Diablo that. 3.
It's so, Whimsyshire, right?
No, Whimsyshire was the, in my opinion, terrible side map for the Rainbow Goblin that opened up, and that was the whole cartoony map with all the clouds and smiles. Secret cow level was still the secret cow level.
I don't remember that being in Diablo 3. How do I not remember that? Huh.
Apparently you haven't. Maybe because it's a secret.
There you go. That's probably it. Yeah, as long as they actually do a real cow level and not like another cartoony, I know they're not going to do that. That totally doesn't jibe with the vibe of the game.
It
But
doesn't jive with any Diablo game. I don't know where that came from.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know. I don't know if the devs were smoking something that day or whatever, and they're like, some guy took a doodle off his paper and said, "Let's put this in the game," and they all laughed and did it. And then, but that was just weird sunshine flower stuff. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I felt about that.
Yeah, I love how the complaints were this game is too cartoony. And then they said, "We got you guys."
Right. But Diablo 4 got away from all of that so far, and it's incredible. Just the cutscenes and the views where you can stand and take in a view, the artwork and the time that went in. You could tell the creation of the game itself was a game of love.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, going back to the trailer once again, when that was pretty much all we had to go off of, you could tell by that trailer. It was bloody, it was dark, there was gore. It was a Diablo trailer. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why we were all so excited for it, because it was like, hey, they're going back to their roots. There's no way they can turn this trailer into a cartoony game, right? They just can't. So this is going to be it. And then you're absolutely right. They smashed that out of the park. The mood fits perfectly. I absolutely love the mood. The story continues and builds upon that lore. And then on top of that, they released that, what was it called? The Book of Lorath, I think it was?
Yes. The book you could buy with all of the lore from within the game, the backstories of each of characters, all kinds of information about the game.
Because a lot of people, especially like more casual players, had no idea who Lilith was, right? Or what her significance was as the villain of the game. And if you don't know that, I highly recommend you can actually watch them for free on YouTube on the Diablo 4 YouTube channel, the Book of Lorath. It's like 4 videos, and it really expands upon the lore and describes who Lilith is and why she matters, and what her coming back into Sanctuary, the significance of that. And it just, there's not many games that have that depth of storytelling and lore. And that's honestly my favorite part about Diablo 4, is just expanding upon that, going through the story. So, yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, the story's always been amazing. The lore in the game has always been so rich, and the depth that's in the game has always been rich. So when you're taking that and, spoiler alert, but if you haven't played Diablo 4 yet, you should be able to expect the spoilers. But tying the fact of Diablo 2, the primevals, bringing that back into play, Mephisto, Diablo, Baal, Duriel, like all of these people come back in Diablo 4. And then the story keeps you guessing with the lore itself. So as you're playing through and you see Lilith and realize who she is, where she came from, how Sanctuary itself was created in this game, is just amazing to tie it back together, especially if you're you started at the beginning with Diablo 1, went into Diablo 2. Diablo 3 was kind of almost a spin-off side piece. I have to give a shout out in Diablo 3 to my boy Deckard Cain, rest in peace. But Diablo 4 even brings back some of those characters you remembered from Diablo 2, at least one in particular, and I won't spoil that, but I was so nostalgic playing through a brand new Diablo game, but getting to look at it like it's a game I played 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, I know what tie-in character you're talking about, and I obviously won't spoil it either, but that made my day. That absolutely made my day. And there's a lot of like little Easter eggs like that hidden throughout the game that are callbacks. And it just kind of reminds you that, hey, you're in the bigger universe, and these games are linked, the stories are linked. And the other thing that I want to say that's a bit off topic, but I want a movie. I'm really hoping that they take a note from League of Legends, who
Okay.
took and developed Arcane, right? And Arcane did really well. They made a lot of money off of it. And it was actually very well produced. I don't know if you saw it or not.
Yeah, I seen it. It was very well produced. It's just video games to movies always scare me for good reason. So
They do.
I mean, in all reality, though, if you took all of the cutscenes from Diablo 2, Diablo 3, Diablo 4, and you were able to string them together the right way and all of that stuff, you'd have a pretty good movie already. So don't screw it up. If you're gonna go live action, it better have money backing it. I will go see it then.
Oh yeah. Well, the trick is you got to have people making the movie that love the series, right? You can't just have people making it that are out to make money. You know, if you make a good movie by people that love the series and love it and are looking for it to succeed from that aspect, it will bring the money in. And I think, I can't remember the studio's name, but the one that made Arcane, I think that was their philosophy, and it worked out really well for them. And if a studio could have that same philosophy towards Diablo, I think that they could have the potential to make a killer series or killer movies or something like that. But they have a wonderful universe of knowledge and lore to expand upon. But they can also do that in game form. But it'd be kind of cool to go grab some popcorn and watch a movie on it too.
Well, and Blizzard's done this before. They released Warcraft, the movie, based on the game. And after watching it, it was a pretty solid movie if you've ever played Warcraft or anything along that lines. And with the movie, it was done pretty well. I would just not want to see a half-assed Diablo movie. I would be pretty upset by that.
Yeah, if they do it, it needs to be amazing. It's either jaw on the floor amazing or it's crap. Like, there's no in between when you're playing with a topic like that that's that loved. Everyone who plays the game loves the story. Some people might complain about the gameplay here and there. Some people might complain about different issues. But I think the one thing that's really universal feedback is everybody loves the story. Everybody loves the characters. You don't mess with that.
Right, and I completely agree. Don't mess with that feedback. And if they start messing with that, then I'm gonna have to go to the crossroads and summon a demon myself to have to fix some things.
Speaking of summoning demons yourselves,
I guess that's a good transition tie-in.
Yeah, we're getting good at these segues. So this sounds weird when I say this out loud. So let me try to phrase it in a way that's not as scary. But one thing that's always interested me from a lore perspective is demonology, which ties in very nicely to this topic. Now, for clarification, I've never been very religious, and I've never been very involved in the occult or anything like that. Okay, just want to get that out there. But I used to love the lore of demonology because if you read through it, it's almost like reading the lore behind a book. There's a lot of story there and a lot of interesting details and backgrounds and stuff, which is cool. And there's actually I actually have a couple grimoires from Solomon, the Testament of Solomon, which is probably the most popular grimoire in the world. And basically there's a lesser and a greater key, they're called. And the lesser key basically describes the demon royalty. So the idea is in hell, and this is actually based off of Christianity, which is hilarious to me, right? Because a lot of people will say, well, demons, that's ridiculous, but I believe everything else about Christianity. And it's like, well, that's where they come from, man.
Right,
so,
right.
I always find that funny, but the idea is that in hell there's these demons, and demons originated from fallen angels, right? When Lucifer so-called rebelled against heaven. And there's different variations of that story between all the different religions, but the idea is that there was a high-ranking angel who gathered other angels and rebelled against heaven and got cast out. And, through one method or another became demons themselves and produced more demons. And the angels that fell from heaven became the royalty. And
Right.
it's really good story, right? It's really good story because there's 72 demons of the Ars Goetia, which are the royalty, and they range from the seven kings down to the princes, down to
Mm-hmm.
different levels, and it's really really interesting to read, and it's really fun to see how they tie some of that lore into things like Diablo and other stories that have been written.
Right, and you take the Diablo universe, and Sanctuary is its own made up world. The lore is its own made up world. Everything in that game is tied to its own backstory. They didn't necessarily steal it.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, Diablo, Devil got that piece. However, it's not like they went to a straight biblical side of the house or religious side of the house, copied everything over and made a video game out of it. This is a different,
Mm-hmm.
Heaven and Hell's always been at war. Fallen angels helping this land and sanctuary that was supposed to be a safe zone when it was created and ended up being part of the war as well. So there was no safe spot. And I love what you're talking about with the hierarchy of demons and looking at that. And I'm sure as well versed as you are, but some of those, Lucifer, Morningstar, the King of Hell, Beelzebub, one of the kings, correct?
Yes, the Lord
Yes.
of Flies.
So their backstories and the lore that's behind them in our culture is just astronomically in depth. And you take it from the kings all the way down to so-called lowly level crossroad demons whose whole job is to be summoned at a crossroad, give you what you want, usually in exchange for your soul with some other conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always got to be a cost, right? There has to be a cost that you pay in exchange for whatever you're asking for.
Right. And that seems to be different stories throughout history, all the way through, whether musicians sold their soul to a demon, people want wealth and fame, and there's actually specific demons to so-called or so as much summon in order to make those deals in particular.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite examples of that is in the Lesser Key of Solomon. So we're jumping back to that mythology for just a second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a prince of hell, and his name is Stolas. And I think he's one of my favorites because he's kind of a contradiction. So when it comes to the Ars Goetia family of demons, most of them are what you would consider evil, right? They hate humans and they want to see humanity demise. Your typical demonic stereotype, right?
Right.
Stolas, on the other hand, he's more of a bookworm and is very passive. He doesn't necessarily wish harm upon humans, but also has no problem, using harm against humans either if need be. But it's not one of his wishes. And he, when summoned, is supposed to grant you knowledge on stars. So basically, not geology. Wow, I'm totally blanking here.
Astrology.
Thank you, astrology. Yes. So he's supposed to grant you knowledge on astrology and plants, horticulture. Like that's a very strange combination.
It is, yes.
And a really good example that I like to use of like taking inspiration from, and I'm bringing this up for a reason, right? We'll get to that, but taking inspiration from a mythos, right? So this is a mythos, the Key of Solomon. Some people might think it's real. Personally, I don't. I view it more of like a creative story. But they take inspiration from that for a character named Stolas in the series Hell of a Boss, which if you haven't seen it and you have a horrible sense of humor, it's a very great show to see.
I'm going to have to put that on my watch list then.
Yeah, absolutely. I would highly recommend it. And they actually have a show that's kind of based on the premise of the denizens of hell and their day-to-day life. And it's a comedy, right? So it's hilarious. It's also super dark. But they influence that character design off of Stolas from Ars Goetia. And there's a lot of differences and stuff, but the underlying principles are there. And one of my favorite parts, tying it back to Diablo now, of Diablo, is that their mythos is quite standalone, right? Like they do take some inspiration from other places. Like for instance, Lilith. Lilith is commonly in a lot of mythos as the daughter, or I'm sorry, the mother of all demons, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
the method of how she becomes that or what that actually means varies from mythos to mythos. But very commonly, she's the mother of demons. And in Sanctuary, she's the mother of Sanctuary, right? And I think that's a very interesting. You can tell where they got the inspiration from for her name at the very least. But they didn't just run with that thought like, oh, she's going to be the mother of all demons. They took that and incorporated that into their own game world and kind of made it their own. And they really, really build upon that. And I think that when you take inspiration but creatively change it like they did there, that really, really drives up the immersion because there's just more, like, you know enough of it to get hooked. The name rings a bell, etc.
Yes.
But then you can really dive in. And the story of Diablo, like we were talking about earlier, is just absolutely phenomenal.
Right. Lilith, the mother. So they took that hook, and instead of, the mother of demons, okay, she's the mother of Sanctuary. This is what happened. Forbidden love angle. And twisted that whole piece together that just, holy crap. And even in the game itself with that lore, it threw you for a loop on how it ends and how it plays through. I'm not trying to give the whole spoiler game here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely incredible. So yeah, when you look at it, Lilith, the mother.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where the origin is, she's always, or most commonly referred to as, the mother. And they kept that piece.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my side of the house with demons comes from a TV show that has always been near and dear to my heart, and it's called Supernatural. I don't know if you've watched that.
I haven't, but it's on my watch list.
Well, it's a long watch list because it's 15 seasons. However, the amount behind the story and the lore through that series, as far as when it comes to demons, whether it's summoning demons, conducting exorcisms, or finding the lore on how to kill a specific demon, it's so in depth throughout that entire series. And it's more of a mix. It's not necessarily all about one religion. That's what kind of hooks me on the angle of it. There's demons, they deal with Greek gods, Hindu gods, Japanese lore of demons, all these different demons that go through from the crossroads all the way to the king of hell, Lucifer, down to, like I said, they've dealt with Greek gods in the series. So it's really fun to see that. As well as they also have other monsters too, werewolves, vampires, all that stuff. It's a whole paranormal realm in the series, kind of like our last episode when we were talking about Phasmophobia. It still ties in with that, but the main start of it is demons. Demons, demons, demons. And as Sam and Dean Winchester, the two main characters, the brothers in the series, grow, their knowledge and their view of this world starts to expand. And to me, it's just so rich with just the lore behind it and the story behind it and what they go through to figure these things out, that it's a show I love. And I've watched through it all twice now.
Oh, wow. 15 seasons twice.
Yeah, that I didn't say that as a prideful moment.
Well, if it's worth twice watching that much, I'm definitely going to have to check it out then, for sure.
So I will say the point that hooked me was season 5. The first 2 seasons are a build-up. Season 5, it was on the dot. It is now Monday night at 7:00. The new episode's coming out, and I'm sitting in my chair if I could, and I'm watching it. Hands down, I'm not gonna miss it. Like, that hooked me.
Wow. Huh. That's how I am with like that Hell of a Boss show I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They drop it, I'm on it. But that's only like
fair.
14 episodes or something like that, not 15 seasons.
Well, and like the whole piece is not even necessarily the 15 season. I've just always been fascinated on that subject of the possibility of the existence of these things. If I were to go to the crossroads tonight, summon, and for those who believe in that spiritual side of the house, the crossroads is a very powerful place against demons, whether you're going there to summon one, or it's even said if you have a evil spirit or a demon that's following you, you can use the crossroads to get them lost, to confuse them, for you to escape. There's multiple reasons for the history behind the crossroads being such a sacred place in this realm of thought and lore behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very mystical and powerful place, and you'll see people who bring offering to the crossroads, or they go to them for different reasons. It's not just I'm going to summon a demon and get a Ferrari.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of like power and influence, one of the things that I find extremely interesting, and this kind of ties into the Diablo series as well, is one of the most powerful things in a lot of mythologies, whether it's for good or evil, so not specific to demons, but also shared by angels, is one language, right? Because knowledge is power. And things like their names is something that's usually super sacred to them. That's usually something that persists, right? If you can identify a demon or an angel by name, that gives you some level of power over them, just by knowing who they are. But the second most powerful thing, typically speaking, is symbolism. So symbols. And a lot of different cultures and a lot of different mythologies represent those in different ways. But one of my favorites is like the old Nordic runes. And
yes.
I love how Diablo 2 took that concept and implemented it with the runes that drop throughout the game. And I'm really hoping that they kind of bring that back more in a traditional sense down the road in Diablo 4. But I absolutely love that system, and I love how that ties into that mythology, right? Like, it's obviously not ripping anything off, but I love how they say there's a rune that has this power and this influence in the world, and you can use that in a way, and especially in combination with other runes, to have certain outcomes.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite parts of Diablo 2, was finding the runes, building rune words for the gear you want, and then finding the specific piece of gear to put it in, so you didn't just waste some of those runes that are really rare. And that even ties into supernatural as well. The symbols, that's all there, and they use that to make a devil's trap or ward and protect a place by putting these runes up. So it kind of ties in across all the boards. And for your information, they are talking about bringing runes to Diablo 4. It's just how they're going to bring them. They want to get it right, so they didn't necessarily say when, maybe with one of the expansions. But I've read a couple different things where instead of having a 6-socket rune word, your runes are going to be split into 2 different types. You're going to have a basically action rune, and then, well, you're going to have like a precursor to an action rune. So it's going to be if you take a potion. So this rune is going to be if you take a potion, it activates the next rune, which might be increased critical chance hit chance.
Gotcha. So you can kind of build like if-then statements almost as kind of one of the proposed ways?
That's what I've read. There's only a limited amount of sockets in Diablo 4 right now, so I don't see how else they would do it. It does make sense going for that if-then statement, or kind of that precursor setup to after your 10th critical strike, this happens. Basically, something leading up to the action itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be really cool. I'd be really interested to see, and hopefully they do bring those back, because that was also one of my favorite crafting mechanics in Diablo 2 was the rune words. And like I was saying, I love how that ties into that mythos there.
It does so well, too.
Mm-hmm. Symbolism is a big thing. You ever see, like, I'm trying to think of a really good example here, like in the Lesser Key of Solomon, when they talk about all the demons and stuff, they outline each demon has an actual seal that identifies it. And when you're summoning those demons, you typically need to draw that seal as part of the ritual, right?
Right, now, yes.
Even though personally I get a kick out of it thinking of this as a story, right? And I don't necessarily believe in the existence of like angels and demons myself, I would never attempt one of these rituals because it's one of those things where it's F around and find out. Well, I'm just not going to F around, right? Just in case. But
so you're taking it that far? I don't say Beetlejuice 3 times in a row, so.
Yeah, so I wouldn't actually try to summon a demon, even though I'm fairly confident it wouldn't work. But the rituals are actually outlined in the books, and the grimoires are actually quite complex. And they depend a lot, usually, on when they're done. So the time of year, where the position of the moon is, etc., etc. But they also depend on a lot of symbolism. So a lot of times it's you have to burn these candles in these positions around the seal that are made of this type of wax, and then you have to, use this type of chalk or whatever, and then you have to have these items and wear this specific thing, and it's super, super complicated with a lot of requirements. And I love in Diablo 4, in the release trailer that we were talking about, how there was very specific requirements to summon Lilith.
Yes.
And how I don't think that Lilith actually had her own seal that I noticed, but when I'm gonna forget the guy's name, Arius, Laeolus, the guy
something like that. Yes, the one who draws them into the temple. By 3 they come to get 3.
Elias. There we go.
Elias. Yep, that'd be it.
If you stumble around enough, you get names right eventually. That's my motto.
Well, I thought her seal, and I could be wrong, wasn't her seal on the floor when it filled with blood?
Yeah, and so there was like something representing a seal on the floor. And I don't know if that was meant to be like her seal or not, or if it was,
Or just a Herodric seal, like a general,
exactly.
This is something to seal.
Exactly, but I absolutely loved the inclusion of that. And the inclusion of the requirement that there's 3 and at least one of them be willing, and the blood and all of that. It kind of makes it more realistic, if you will. And I absolutely loved pretty much every aspect of that release trailer.
Right. And even though we sit here and talk about that lore and stuff like that, I'll tell you one thing. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm not about to head to the crossroads, on Friday, this upcoming Friday, the 13th at midnight, and attempt to summon a demon, because even though I'm with you, it may not work. If the off chance that it does happen, well, that demon's going to be able to follow my brown streaks all the way home.
That's a day where you wear the brown pants.
Exactly. Bring me my brown pants.
Yep.
If all of a sudden I turned around and so I'm standing there because it actually worked. It's just like in the movie Ted, when he's in court. I believe it was Ted 2. And he's like, that's it. I know how we can do this. I'm going to summon Beetlejuice. And Mark Wahlberg's like, no, stop this. You're messing with powers you don't understand. Like, you just laugh at it because there's all those things. Even growing up as kids, you had some of the things I do remember trying for quote unquote witchcraft or black magic or demons. The whole, daring someone to go into the room and saying red rum 3 times in the mirror, or stiff as a board, light as a feather, to try and make someone float. Those little seances almost like that. And even then, it's like, I ain't saying that. I ain't going in there.
Screw that. See, I'm the opposite. When I was dared, when I used to live in a small town above a crematory. And
yes, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've mentioned that in a previous episode. And for the record, in case you didn't hear that episode, I was not aware that it was above a crematory when I signed in, and they didn't disclose that, so I probably wouldn't have moved in. He said,
ooh, cheaper rent.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get a discount.
Oh.
And anyway, I was dared middle of the night to go into the the basement area where the crematory was. Like, it was obviously not an active one, but they still had like a bunch of really crazy stuff down there. And they said, well, if you don't believe in that stuff, you're not going to go down there and sit down there for a minute before you come out, no light or anything. And I'm like, well, screw you. Yeah, I am. And I did it. And nothing happened, but wow, I almost shit myself. It was probably one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. Not doing that again.
That's, it made me think of that TikTok where it said, my daughters are upstairs with their friends playing with a Ouija board, and it showed the dad at the power breaker. And as they're playing, he starts flipping the breaker on and off, and you just hear screaming upstairs and running.
That's
Like,
me as a dad.
that's messed up.
That is 100% me. Yeah.
I mean, I laughed. Don't get me wrong, I laughed. But if it happened to me, I'd probably break a window or something and take off running because no,
I wouldn't
you.
even be able to get mad at the kids if they broke a window or something crazy.
No, you brought that on yourself at that point. If the Ouija board's stuck in your TV when you go upstairs, you can't even yell because you did that to yourself.
Yeah, it'd be one of those tail between the legs moments.
Right.
Did you hear? This was pre-COVID, so maybe like 5 years ago or whatever. But there was a Etsy shop that was selling pendants, and they were advertising them as pendants with like angelic like blessings on them, right?
Oh, okay.
And they were actually carving because the people got a kick out of this, right? They were actually carving like demonic curses into these pendants and selling them, saying they were like angelic blessings, because depending how deep you dive into different lores, you know, there's different like runic languages for these things.
Right, yeah.
And so like a lot of people, you know, that were like super into this stuff, they it was a big thing. There was a lot of I think a lot of lawsuits around that.
But that's just like people who go to Japan and they're like, look, I got love in Japanese, and really it just means, you know, douchebag or something.
Yeah.
But they think it's cool.
It says, I'm a stupid foreigner.
Yeah, exactly. Go home. But you're like, yeah, this means, you know, dragon fighter.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Yeah, so I mean, you're just buying it like, oh yeah, I got this angelic pendant, and really you're carrying around the symbol of some demon or bad fortune curse, demonic curse. Yeah, I'd be pretty upset about that too.
Gotta always do your research before you buy something like that, especially if you are a heavy believer in it, right? And you actually believe that it is influencing something. Make sure you're buying the right thing.
Yeah, do your research, not like, hey, this pendant's been blessed by the leader of our church. Oh, cool, I'll buy 5 of them. Who's the leader, by the way? Oh, the leader of Satanism. Wait, what? Hold up.
Yeah, wait a minute now.
You gotta kind of watch that sort of run with things. And I mean, I think it's out there, possibly. I mean, I've never can say I've summoned a demon or anything, but maybe after eating Taco Bell, but that was expelling a demon. That's a different story. One we probably don't need to go into.
Be gone, Satan.
Pretty much. I don't think anything survives after that.
Yeah, and I think my viewpoint on that is very similar to our last episode where we discussed paranormal in general. I don't necessarily believe that it's true, but I have an open mind to being proven otherwise one day, right? And I don't think in my mind that there's been sufficient evidence, but am I going to go out and try to summon a demon to prove it? No, I'm not going to. So, you know, I'll never know, but maybe someone will.
That's fair enough. Or if one of the end of days prophecies that are out there comes true, I guess we'll all find out. Who knows? We'll see. Mm-hmm. So overall, tying it all together, going back to Diablo 4, how do you rate the game itself?
So I think rating it from 2 different perspectives, okay? One is going to be gameplay perspective. From a gameplay and entertainment perspective, I think I rate it... Oh, see, this is a tough one. I would probably rate it like a 6 right now. I think that, as we discussed, the story is worth a play. I had a blast with my first playthrough, but just being the type of game that it is, I should be able to play it way longer than I did, and I couldn't, and that's my biggest complaint, which will hopefully be fixed. From that perspective, what are your thoughts?
So the story, 12 out of 10. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Cinematics, phenomenal. Mm-hmm. First playthrough was outstanding. The game itself felt smooth. The controls didn't feel too messed up. It was easy to play. Building a build kind of wasn't difficult, but you had some more things to think about now. So I loved it from that whole aspect. Mm-hmm. The end game is what kills me. End game content to keep coming back and have a reason to do that endless grind, I guess you could say. Like, why am I coming back to this after I hit level 100? What if I even hit level 100? What's the point of coming back?
Yeah, yeah. And to clarify, I would like to amend what I said just a tiny bit. If you count only the first playthrough, right, and you take apart that longevity part, I would say it's probably like a 9 out of 10 for me, just for that
That's
first
fair.
playthrough, right? It was
Yes.
great. To me, it's a little more simplified than I would like, but it's also geared towards a more casual player, right? So the player base isn't looking for something super complicated, and that's not what it's advertised as. If you want that, go play Path of Exile. And that's
Right.
more like my 10 out of 10 type of game. But knowing that it's geared towards that, it's advertised towards that, I would give it a solid 9 for that. And hopefully they can bring the long part up to that range pretty soon.
Yeah, the current end game content, I'd give it a 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just nothing that's really hooking to keep me in the game right now. And I've tried multiple times. I've loaded it up, I got my character, started playing the season, and it's like, okay, I'm done. Close it out. Like, there's just, I don't feel the hook yet, and I'm hoping they fix it.
Yeah. Now, the other perspective, and I couldn't agree more with you, by the way, but the other perspective that I want to look at it from is a realistic perspective. And this is open to some interpretation, right? Because when you're talking about demons and angels and those types of things, there's a lot that's open for opinion-based input, right? Because it's not something that's proven. So maybe we'll talk about it on a level of believability. I would rate it on believability a 10 out of 10. I love the story, the lore, the kind of like getting immersed and not breaking that immersion while you're playing. There's nothing that stands out as being out of place or unrealistic in the universe that they're building for the game. So I would give it, and this is very rare for me. I think there's probably like 2 games I would ever give anything a 10 out of 10 to. I would give that part of that rating a 10 out of 10 for sure.
I agree, because there's enough backstory, lore, build up, development within the game that, as far as on a realism aspect, could you take that game and put yourself in that story and have enough to be like, this is real? I completely think so. I think that it goes just as in depth with the character development and the backstory as one of the books of Solomon that we have and it's been around for
thousands of years.
I was gonna say that's been around for a couple thousand years now, or 1,000 years, give or take, for the Solomon book. And that's, in reality, that's there. It's the same lore. So if you were to take this story and compare it, I'm not saying that it's more important or better than an actual historic book that was written, but the amount of detail and stuff that is in it is definitely comparable.
Oh, for sure. 100% for sure. So yeah, I'd say overall, definitely worth a play. Great game. They need to do some improvements for keeping an audience engaged longer than, that first 20-hour playthrough or whatever it was.
Right.
But other than that, great game. Great game for sure.
No, I do agree, and Diablo will always be near and dear to my heart. I always want to defend it, but I need to be honest with it too, and it hurts because the amount of hours I have in Diablo 2 is what I thought I would be doing in Diablo 4, and thought I would have absolutely no life outside of it. It's just not the case yet, so hopefully in the future it will be.
We'll get you back into Path of Exile eventually, don't worry.
Oh boy, I don't have enough monitors to keep the stats up for that game. But with that being said, it is still October, so we're trying to continue the trend of something related to the supernatural, the paranormal, the spooky side of the house. So next week's episode, hopefully you'll tune in or check it out, is going to be 7 Days to Die to Zombies Arise. And we're reaching back a little bit. 7 Days to Die is kind of an older game, but it's one that is near and dear to my heart, and it currently just had a big revamp in the game that kind of changed the aspects of it again, a big patch. So hopefully you'll stay tuned, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Sanctorum.
And this is malkariss. Have a great day.